The world of ships and the sea, and so too is this. There's a link, a chain if you like, between your world here and the world out there that's been slowly poisoned by pollution. Because what we do here makes a real difference out there on dry land.
For years we've been poisoning our planet, and for years we could just shrug, say we didn't know what we were doing. Not anymore. Thanks to reports, tests and detailed surveys, the world now knows what causes acid rain, global warming and the depletion of the ozone layer.
We do, man, and the chemicals we use. Often those chemicals come from factories and cars on land, but they also come from ships at sea. Not exactly, but see what I mean? It's not exactly Harry Potter. Trouble is, you can't ignore it. Burn the wrong sort of fuel, lose track of engine modifications, dump too much nitrogen oxide into the air, and port state authorities around the world can stop your ship from sailing. Stop you from earning a living for that family of yours back home. And you. And you.
Whether you're a captain or an engineer, a cook or a seaman, this film is for you. It's about air pollution and the law, about you and your ship. It's about the fuels, chemicals and gases we use, and the facts we record that will keep your ship on the high seas and you in a job.
Keep with me, all right? I'm here to help you get to grips with the new rules. Okay, now here's the heavy bit. Stick with it. That acid rain, most of it is caused by sulfur oxides and nitrogen oxides that are carried in the air and dumped on land. Coal and oil burning power plants are the main source of sulfur oxides. Nitrogen oxides come from car, truck and ship exhausts. Until a few years ago, we all thought that sulfur and nitrogen dumped by ships at sea stayed well away from land. Well, now we know that's wrong. It doesn't. It gets carried hundreds of miles to shore. Now, Marpol Annex 6 says what we can and what we can't do. It lays down the law. And it does so, as far as you're concerned, in 4 key areas.
The fuel we use, the engines that drive our ships, the gases we use to fight fires and keep things cold or insulated, the rubbish we burn.
Here, right here. This is where it matters, at the main bunker manifold, where bunkers come aboard your ship. And whose responsibility is it to get it right? You've got it, yours. Everyone has a role to play, a responsibility. Bunkers, fuel oil coming onto the ship, tons of it every hour. But you're not just taking on fuel, you can't see it, you can't smell it, you're taking on sulfur too. Sulfur that will be dumped into the atmosphere after the fuel has been burnt. Up through there, the funnel.
It's estimated ships dump 4.5 million tonnes of sulphur into the atmosphere each year. Marpol Annex 6 plans to put a stop to that.
Despite all the words, I reckon this is good news. It'll help us all do our bit to make the world cleaner and safer. Not just for you and me, but for our kids and families. It's not just our world, it's their world too, now and tomorrow. Marpol Annex 6 changes the law about air pollution at sea in 3 major ways.
1. By insisting that all bunkers, fuel oil, diesel oil, gas oils, have a sulphur content of no more than 4.5%. 2. By creating sulphur emission control areas, blocks of water where that sulphur content in fuel oils must be even less, no more than 1.5%. Those SECAs to include, in time, the Baltic, North Sea, English Channel, South China Sea and the Straits of Malacca. 3. By ordering every ship to carry a valid International Air Pollution Prevention Certificate and an Engine International Air Pollution Prevention Certificate, an EIA-PP. This relates to nitrogen oxides only and to engines fitted to ships whose keels were laid after January 1st, 2000, or large engine modifications after that date.
To get these certificates, you've got to show that your ship conforms to the new air pollution laws in Marpol Annex 6, and that you've got the paperwork and the validated fuel samples to prove it. Without that, port state authorities anywhere in the world have the power to stop you from sailing. And they will too.
Marpol Annex 6 covers all ships on passage over 400 gross tonnes. It also applies to fixed and floating drilling rigs, supply ships and other platforms. The aim of the new law? To limit sulphur content of any fuel oil, and thus limit the amount of sulphur oxides generated during burning. Your ship's aim? To pass any random port state inspection and show due diligence whilst keeping to the spirit of the law.
So, you and your ship, this ship, tied up far from home and going nowhere? Not if I can help it. It starts here, right here, at the inlet bunkering manifold, the point of custody transfer where fuel supplied by someone else flows into your ship. This is the place, right here, where his fuel could become your problem. One thing's for sure, once the fuel comes aboard, it's your responsibility to make sure that the fuel flowing through this pipe here is no more than 4.5% sulphur. So you need to take a sample.
In theory and in law, sampling is the responsibility of your fuel oil supplier and should be witnessed by all parties.
But we live in the real world, right? Which means that it's not down to him, but it's down to you. Because as you and I both know, the chances are the supplier won't even take a sample, won't even come aboard. So, sampling is down to you. Do it once, do it right. Your ship's commercial survival is at stake.
Ready?
Do it by ensuring that what is taken is a fully representative sample taken by continuous drip, by using a proper sampling system like this one here. by making sure that your bunker delivery note shows grade and sulfur content at less than 4.5%. If fuel is offered at more, don't accept it. To do so would break the law and is also a detainable offence. Formally log and protest at any deviation.
You're the man. The buck stops with you. Good job.
Make sure the bunker delivery note you receive, the BDN, is kept for 3 years. It is now a statutory document that can be inspected at any time by Port State Authority. Protect it. Take an additional 4th fuel sample by continuous drip. This is your Marpol fuel sample. It must be sealed with a tamper-proof security seal and properly identified. This must be witnessed by the master or officer in charge and by the fuel supplier's representative. That fuel sample must be kept for at least a year or until most sampled fuel is used up, whichever is longer. Record the taking of all fuel samples in a bunker record book and make sure the paper trail is accessible and can be easily retrieved.
Think that's all there is to Marpol Annex 6? Think again. We ain't done yet. Marpol Annex 6 has a sting in its tail, a new piece of legislation that's going to have even more impact. On most seas, if you're burning fuel that's less than 4.5% sulphur, you're in the clear. On most seas. Most, but not all. Take a look at this.
Annex 6 also makes provision for something new, something they call sulphur emission control areas. Busy seaways around the world where that sulphur level isn't set at a maximum of 4.5%, but 3% less at 1.5%. Ships approaching those areas that don't have that purer fuel will have to burn through the bad stuff and switch to the new fuel well before they enter these clean sea areas, so that the fuel being burnt when entering the area has a sulphur content below 1.5%. And every move, every action by skipper and chief engineer must be noted, logged and recorded. To ships that carry only the purer, more expensive fuel, that's no problem, but an awful lot don't.
Yet as the new law stands, that's what you've got to do. Either stay outside the sulphur emission control areas, use fuel that's only got 1.5% sulphur, or risk breaking the law. Do that, get caught, and you lose your International Air Pollution Prevention Certificate. And without that, like I said, your ship's going nowhere. She's dead in the water. There's more. Follow me. Marpol Annex 6 kicks in down here too. The name of the game, as with all Marpol Annex 6, is to prevent and control air pollution from ships. You've heard what the law now says about sulphur in fuel. This part is about marine engines, diesel engines specifically. It's all about cutting down on the emissions of nitrogen oxide, the stuff that comes out of the ship's exhaust, the funnel. And how much of that escapes out into the atmosphere depends largely on the efficiency of that, the engine.
The law applies to every diesel engine, apart from emergency engines with a power output of more than 130 kilowatts on passage, on ships whose keel was laid after January the 1st, 2000, or which have undergone major conversions since that date.
When it was first installed, every engine was tested and certified to perform within Marpol limits for the emissions of nitrogen oxides. As a result, each engine was awarded one of these, an EIAPP, an Engine International Air Pollution Prevention Certificate. And to keep that certificate and stay within the law, engineers are required to conform to a new technical code and prove their engines are as efficient now as the day they were installed. And they can do this in two ways.
First, by continually measuring funnel exhaust gases from each engine, a way that is both expensive and largely still in development. Second, by something known as the parameter check method, by regularly measuring, monitoring and recording engine performance now against that in place at time of build when the engine was first rated. It means keeping meticulous records in each engine's technical file and tracking through the engine record book the life and performance of every component that might affect the level of nitrogen oxide emissions from the engine. It also means an actual inspection of listed components, a stripping down of the engine to ensure that parts used are parts listed and IMO certified.
It's not really as daunting as it sounds. You're used to that already, right? It's what you do. It's part of your ship's planned maintenance system. It comes with a job. It's what marks you out as a professional. But remember this, overall, parameter checks are vital. Without these records, without the engine record book and technical file showing how each engine conforms within emission limits, your vessel could be at real risk. All these new regulations about sulfur levels, about nitrogen oxides, meticulous checks on engine efficiency, they have just one aim: to cut down on the pollution that's poisoning the home we all share, our planet. There are two other ways that ships like this can add to the problem. Two other areas you should know about that are covered by Marpol Annex 6: incineration and the release of halons and CFCs, man-made chemicals that damage the ozone layer and add to our problems of global warming. We used to use halons in old firefighting systems and CFCs, chlorofluorocarbons, as refrigerants in air conditioning and insulation material. It's been estimated that ships used to dump between 3,000 and 6,000 tonnes of CFCs into the atmosphere each year. Both halons and CFCs are being phased out. It's now illegal to install any new system containing chemicals that damage the ozone. Existing systems that use halons and CFCs can still be used, but the deliberate venting of such systems is prohibited, even when maintaining, servicing, repairing or disposing of old systems. And remember, your maintenance records can be checked, verified for accuracy by port state inspectors. Well, that's just about it really for Marpol Annex 6. Mind you, there is one other thing. Not anymore, you don't. A few years ago, this is what you did with your rubbish. Tossed it into an old oil drum and set fire to it. Not anymore. Incineration too comes under the new Marpol regulations. You can only burn waste in an IMO-approved incinerator. There has to be documented evidence recorded in one of these, the garbage record book, that proves it's a safe and efficient operation, that certain excluded materials are not being burned and landed ashore to a suitable site, and crew are trained in its use. In practice, this means that a chief engineer has to certify that a named person has received instruction and is competent to run the incinerator. Entries must be checked in the ship's log, the garbage record book, and the oil record book. Marpol Annex 6. The new rules. Get to know them. They're part of the fight. Your fight to make your children's world a cleaner and safer place. Thanks for watching. See you around and safe sailing.